Okay, so our first problem is asking us if Pedro travels from Perry, Oregon, all the way to Medford, Oregon, and then back again, and it takes him 8 hours, what will be the average kilometers per hour? And when I have an average kilometers per hour, that tells me I'm doing a rate. So I know I'm going to have some sort of fraction. So it says kilometers per hour. I know the hours was 8 hours, and then for the kilometers, I need to double how far he traveled the 96 kilometers because he went twice. He went 96 kilometers to Medford and then 96 kilometers to Perry. Otherwise, he is stuck in Medford. So 96 plus 96, and that's going to give me 192 kilometers. But I'm not finished because I need to um, continue dividing this, and 192 divided by 8 gives me 2 right here, because it fits in 2 times 8 is 16, 32. 8 fits into 32 24 times. 8 times 4 is 32, remainder 0, so it's going to be 24 kilometers per hour. Number 2 says there's a ratio of dogs to cats in a neighborhood of 3 to 7. If there's a total of 210 dogs and cats, what is the number of cats? So whenever we see the word ratio, we know we need to make a ratio box. So I go ahead and I make my box. This is going to be my dogs. That's my cats. Oh, no. No, no, don't do that. This is my ratio, and that's my actual. And this is my dogs, and this is my cats. There we go. That looks better. But I'm also going to have a total. So my ratio is 3 dogs to 7 cats. I know my total for my actual is 210. I'm trying to figure out this number right here. I don't care about this. It doesn't ask me what my number of dogs is, so I don't need to worry about that. Whenever I have a problem like this, I'm going to have to set up fractions. So, to set up a fraction, I need to have numbers that are right next to each other in my box. So I don't know my actual total number, but I can find that by adding my two numbers in my ratio. So 3 plus 7 is 10. And now I can set up fractions and cross multiply to find the number of cats. So 7 out of 10 equals C for cats over 210. Now I cross multiply. 7 times 210 equals 10C. To get rid of my C or my 10, I'm going to divide each side by 10, but first I'm going to actually multiply my 7 times 210, and using my calculator I find out that that is 1470 equals 10C, and I'm going to divide both sides by 10 to get rid of my 10, cross off a 0 here. So now I have 147 equals C. So does that make sense? 147 cats to 210 total? Yeah, that makes sense to me. It should be over halfway of whatever number this is, because it's 7 right here, right? So it's like 7 out of 10, so 70% of the number. So, all right, for number 3, it says that a girl has a redwood tree and it's 900 centimeters in circumference, which is the area or the measurement around the whole tree. And she estimates the diameter is 300 centimeters. So the diameter, remember, is if we cut the tree in half. She says this is 300 centimeters. And the question is asking, is this an accurate estimation, or is she above or below? Again, this is an extra credit question. So if you get add 1 to your score. But if you didn't get it, I hope you at least tried. So remember our formula for circumference is circumference equals pi times diameter. So if we fill in the number she has is 900 equals pi times the diameter is 300. So an easy thing to do now would be to divide my 300 from both sides. And I'm left with cross, 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 cancel, cancel, 3 equals pi. Well, we know pi is actually a number, not just a symbol. And the symbol for pi stands for 3.14 blah, 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 right? So the question is 3, well, we know it's not equal. Is it above or below or equal to 3.14? And it's below. So her estimate is too large. No. Yes, because pi is greater than 3.14. So her estimate is a little too large for her circumference. Okay. Number 4. Let's see. So there's 3 pounds of pistachios for $6.99. What is the price per pound? If you see that word per, you think a ratio, cats, per, right? So I am going to do price is dollars per pound, right? So I fill this in $6.99. I wish they had just done 7. It would have been way easier. Hello, 9s. And divide that by 3. So that gives me 2. That fits in. Put my decimal up here. 3 fits into 9 3 times. 3 fits into 9 3 times. And I'm done. So the price per pound is $2. Ooh, it's not working today. And 33 cents per pound. So then, how much would 10 pounds cost? Well, I'm going to multiply that rate by 10. And that's going to give me $23.30 for $10. Or, yes, for $10. 10 pounds of pistachios. All right, number 5. Number 5 is mostly figuring out if you can set this problem up right, okay? If the product of 6/10 and 3/10 is subtracted from the sum of 2/10 and 4/10, what is the difference? So it's a little weird because actually this part is the first part you read in the question. So this is your 6/10 and 3/10. So that's the first part of the question. Then you had to go back and do this part right here. So you actually wrote the second half first. It's very strange. Anyway, if you set it up, that was the big thing. Then let's think about order of operations. Remember, order of operations is PEMDAS. So I see some stuff in parentheses, so I'm going to start there first. I am going to, let's see if I can cancel anything. And I can already simplify this. So this is going to be, let's see, divide both of them by 2 3/5. So now I'm going to go ahead and multiply through, and I get 9/50. And then minus this, and then I'm going to go ahead and write everything down here. So just bring everything else down so I don't get confused. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add my 2 fractions here, 6/10, and then I have minus 9/50. And I want to make sure that these 2 fractions have the same denominator. So I'm going to change this guy to make sure everybody is the same denominator. So I have 30 50ths minus 9 50ths, and that gives me 21 50ths. So the answer in the book actually does it with decimals, because you could think of it as 2/10 as 0.2 or 4/10 as 0.4. That's a totally fine way to do it. I didn't even think about doing that until I saw the answer. But if you did that with decimals, the equivalent decimal would be 42 or 0.42. So either of these is a perfectly good answer. And you could do it either way with the decimals or the fractions. It's up to you. All right, number 6. Let's get a new color here. Let's do pink. All right, so on number 6, it says diagram this statement, then answer the questions that follow. 3/5 of the baker's 60 cookies were chocolate chip cookies. Letter A, how many of the baker's cookies were chocolate? So I already drew my diagram box here, and it says 3/5 of the cookies were chocolate chips. So this is our chocolate. And the total number of cookies is 60, because it says 3/5 of the 60 are chocolate. So then to figure out how much goes in each box, I can think 60 divided by my 5 boxes, because 60 is my total, and that's going to give me 12 per box. And the first part of my question is, how many cookies were chocolate cookies? So I look at this part right here, and I have 12 3 times. So I find out 36 cookies were chocolate. And then it says what percent is not chocolate? So that's this part down here. So what I would do is say, well, that's 2/5, which is a fraction. But I need to get into percent. So remember, percent's always out of 100. So I can multiply it by 2/2, which gives me 4/10, and multiply it by 10 again, which would give me 40/100. So it's going to be 40%. All right, number 7. Let's do this one in green. Okay, number 7 asks us, a cube has how many vertices and what is the volume of this cube? So every cube has the same number of vertices. And an easy way to see all my vertices is to pretend like I am Batman and have X-ray vision, and I can see the whole box, okay? So the vertices are the places where my edges come together. So 1 vertice, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 vertices on every cube. It's where my edges come together. What is the volume of my cube? Remember, volume, we said, is length times width times height. Here's my length, 3, my width, 3, and my height, 3. So I end up with 9 times 3. So the volume is 27 feet, and I multiply my feet 3 times, so it's feet cubed. For number 8, they ask us to find the circumference of both of these squares. Well, to do that, I need to remember my formula, which is circumference equals pi times diameter. So for letter A, circumference is going to equal pi, because it tells us to use pi for pi. And then my diameter, I only have the radius, so I need to find the actual diameter. So the diameter is going to be 22 centimeters, because my diameter is twice my radius. Oops. So all I have to do then is just rewrite it as 22 pi. I'm going to keep pi as pi because that's what it tells us to do in the questions, and just have centimeters there. That's letter A. So letter B, I already have my diameter. It tells me it's 280. So the circumference equals 22 over 7. And then my diameter is 280. I use 22 over 7 because it tells me to with my pi. And I can just make that into a fraction, which makes it easier to multiply, because I put a 280 over 1, and I can cancel out before I multiply, so that, oops, that does not become a 4. Ooh, that's a 1, and this becomes a 40. And then I multiply, and that gives me 8,800 millimeters. If you didn't simplify, that's okay. You just would have had to divide it by 7 when you were done, and that would give you your 880 millimeters that you would use for your circumference. So sorry, it's 880 millimeters. I said 88 before. Okay, number 9. Write these in scientific notation. So remember, scientific notation is when we have our decimal right here. Right now we don't have that decimal, so I need to move it. So I'm going to do 1 to the left. So now I have 1.1 times 10 to the 1, right? Because isn't that 11? If I do 1.1 times 10 to the 1, I'm just multiplying it by 10. But I still have this 10 to the negative 7th. So I'm going to look at my exponents, and I'm multiplying, so I'm going to be adding my exponents. So I end up with 1.1 times base 10, and then 1 minus 7, which is negative 6. So I end up with 1.1 times 10 to the negative 6th. For letter B, I have to make this into scientific notation as well. So I'm going to move my decimal up 1 place. Now I have 1.1 times 10 to the 1, because I moved it 1 place to the left, and I'm still multiplying it by that original 10 to the positive 7th. Once again, I'm looking at my exponents. They have the same base, so I can add them together. And I end up with 1.1 times 10 to the 8th. And that's my scientific notation. So for number 10, 11, I look at the image and use that as my way to solve. So number 10 asked, what is the area of my right triangle? So remember, this little box here tells us it's a right triangle. So this is the part of my figure that I'm trying to find the area of. And I need to remember my area of a triangle. Area equals base times height over 2. Area equals, so I need to pick a base. So I'm going to say this is my base. Base, and I'm going to say this is my height, times height over 2. Does it need to be in that order? No. You can do area equals 40 times 30 over 2. That's totally fine. You can't use this line though. Okay, because that is, if I flip my triangle, it's this part right here. And that is not a side that I could use for area or for my area for my base times height. That's my hypotenuse, so I don't want to use that side. So I could do area equals 30 times 40 or divided by 2, or area equals 40 times 30 divided by 2. Either is fine. And then I multiply these, and 30 times 40 is 1200, and I divide that by 2, and that's going to give me 600 millimeters squared. Number 11 is tricky. It's not hard, but it's tricky. Okay, so you had to read carefully and think about what exactly is an isosceles triangle. So I'm finding the area of the isosceles triangle. Remember, an isosceles triangle, we think of it looking like that, where this side is the same length as that side. So if I look at my picture, I used my right triangle before, but I have to find two sides that are the same length of a triangle. And the only ones I can use are these two sides. Okay, so that's going to be the area of my triangle. That's what I'm going to be using, is this triangle. Okay, so I need to continue with my area of a triangle formula, which is base times height divided by 2. And do I have a base? Yes, my base is 50. Do I have a height? Yep, 30. It's this part right here. And then I divide that whole thing by 2, which gives me 1500 over 2, which simplifies to 750 millimeters squared. For number 12, I'm asked to evaluate AB minus A minus B if A equals 0.5 and B equals 0.4. So whenever I have letters like this, I'm going to plug in whatever numbers they give me. So 0.5 times 0.4 minus parentheses 0.5 minus 0.4. And then I need to do whatever's in my parentheses. So these parentheses are really times parentheses, so I'm going to leave them alone for right now. I'm going to go over and do the subtraction parentheses, and that's 0.1. And I bring everybody else down. Okay, now I can do my multiplication. So 0.5 times 0.4 gives me 0.0. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. 0.20. And I get that because 5 times 4 is 20, and I have two numbers after my decimal because I have this number and that number after my decimal. So two numbers after my decimal, subtract it by 0.1, and that's going to give me a total of 0.1. Because remember, I can have like an imaginary 0 here, so it's really 0.20 minus 0.10. That gives me 0.1, or you could say 0.10. Either is fine. Number 13. What number is 25% of 1200? I write this as WN is equals 25%. I'm going to put it in decimal form, 0.25 of multiply 1200. And now all I have to do is solve. So, let's see. I can multiply this by 0.25. I can change this into 1/4 and multiply it by that way. That's a little easier. You can still do it the other way too. So I'm going to divide both of these by 4, and that's going to give me 300. 300 over 1, WN equals 300. Could you multiply 1200 times 0.25? Yes, you can. I'm just showing you a different way. That's a little bit easier, but this way, that works too. Number 14 is fill in the boxes. So my first one says I need to find the decimal for 1 over 8. So I can always change a fraction to a decimal by dividing. 8 fits into 10 one time. Subtract 2. 8 fits into, bring my 0 down. 8 fits into 20 2 times. 4. Bring another 0 down. 8 fits into 40 5 times, and then I'm done. So 0.125. For a percent, remember I always move my decimal over 2 times. 12.5%. Okay, for my second line, I'm going to change my percent into a decimal, and the easiest way to do that is just to move my decimal the opposite way as last time. So this is going to be 0.18 as my decimal. And then for my fraction, I can just put my decimal over 100, but I want to simplify it to make the world happier. So I'm going to divide both of these by 2, which gives me 9 over 50. That goes right here. So this is A, B, C, D. For number 15, they ask us to use a unit multiplier to convert 8,000 grams to kilograms. So I'm going to start with 8,000 grams. I'm going to multiply it by grams. And then I have kilograms over here, right? That's what I know I end with. So I know I have to put kilograms here. It's going to be my new unit. So I want my grams to cancel out, so that's why grams are on the bottom, because they'll eventually cancel out. I can put a 1 over here to help me remember that. So how many grams are in 1 kilogram? It's 1,000. And now I can go ahead and multiply. So grams cancels, grams cancels. So I have 8,000 divided by 1,000, really. So it's going to end up with 8,000 kilograms over 1,000. That's what I'm left with. I can cancel out these zeros because I can cancel out those. I'm left with 8 kilograms. Number 16. I'm supposed to solve these, and they really want you to use your newfound skills from Investigation 7, your pre-algebra skills. So I need to get q by itself, so I have to do the same thing to both sides, and I'm going to subtract 36, which leaves, this cancels that guy out, which leaves me with q equals 42 minus 36. I could put a 0 here, right? So 6 minus 0 is 6. This is 12, that's 3. 12 minus 6 is 6. So q equals 6.6. And I check my work and say 6.6 plus 36. Does that equal 42.6? Well, it does. So, yay, good job. Number 17. 5n equals 32. Well, to get n by itself, I have to divide both sides by 5. 5's cancel out, and I'm left with n equals 32 divided by 5. And then I have to do some long d over here. And let's see, 5 fits into 32 6 times. So I can either write this as 6 and 2/5, or I can keep going and get a decimal. 5 fits in to bring down 20. 20 4 times. So either 6 and 2/5 or 6.4 equals n. And I check my work. I say 5 times 6.4 equals 32. Does that work? 6.4 times 5, 0, carry my 2, 30 plus 2, 32. Yay, it works. Check. For number 18, they asked me to multiply 8.6 times 5 1/4 and put my answer in decimal form. So I think the easiest way to go about this is to just go ahead and put that 5 1/4 in decimal form to begin with. So 8.6 times 5.25. And now I can multiply to my heart's delight, as long as I remember, oops, that should be a multiply there, to keep track of my decimal points. So I have 3 decimal points. So I know in the end, I'm going to need to have 3 decimal points with my answer. Okay, so 5 times 6 is 30, 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3 is 15, 5 times 6 is 30, plus 1 is 31. Put a 0 because I'm doing my next line. 8 times 5 is 40. This is 40 now. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 4 is 20. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 2 is 42. And I add them up, and I get I'm going to put my decimal here because it's 3 numbers. I have to have 3 numbers after my decimal, right? 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the answer is 45.15, or if you wanted to, you could leave that 0 on there. As long as you have that or 45.15, that works. I'm very concerned where your decimal is, though. Make sure your decimal is in the right spot. Number 19 is seeing if you can add and subtract negative numbers. So minus 6 stays minus 6, plus a negative, that's going to keep it negative. Minus 3 minus a negative becomes a positive. Plus 1 minus a positive becomes a negative, minus 4. And then you can add left to right. I prefer to add up all my negatives and all my positives and figure out what I come up with. So negative, negative, negative. So that's going to be negative 9 plus negative 4 gives me negative 13 plus 1, and that gives me negative 12. If you did it the other way and did them in order, it would look like this. Negative 9 plus 1 minus 4. That gives me negative 8 minus 4, and that gives you negative 12. Either way works, it's just 2 different options. And my last problem. 1 1/3 divided by 3 1/2 times 2. So I need to do my order of operations, which is PEMDAS. And I'm going to start in my parentheses right here. So 3 1/2, I'm going to make this into an improper fraction, which gives me 7/2, times, put that 2 into an improper fraction, 2/1. And when I multiply that, I can cancel these 2 out, and I'm left with 7. Then I have 1 1/3 divided by 7, which just looks happy. So remember, when I divide by a fraction, I multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to make that 1 1/3 into an improper fraction to begin with. Multiply by the reciprocal of 7, which is 1/7. I can't simplify before I multiply, so I just go ahead and multiply through, and that gives me 4 and 21. No, just 4/21. Whew. Okay, and that is your last problem on this practice test.